Yo, what's up guys? My name is Malvision. In this video I'm just going to do a first impressions of the Blood DK on Legion Beta. So let's take a look. I was super overwhelmed by Blood DK, just all the changes. I was like, oh god man, this is the game. As soon as I tested this out and thought I didn't like it, I jumped to another class like instantly. I was like, oh man, they ruined it, they ruined it, they ruined it. But I simmered down, took a few days, I leveled up slowly, now I'm 108, and honestly, it actually doesn't feel too dissimilar from live. So when you first boost the Blood DK on beta, and you do like the intro zones and you're invading the demon gates, you feel super weak. Like I was actually getting super frustrated leveling through the intro zones because I was dying, dude. Like I never die as a Blood DK. I was death striking, I was popping everything that I had, but I felt like I was missing like all my heals. Like my death strike wasn't saving me. I didn't have any of the proper defensives. My DPS was crap. You can't go into combat. Like one of the DK things is you go into combat to heal yourself because that's the way death strike works. But in this case, you actually had to pause and eat like mage food. I literally felt like I needed a healer. But having said that, I started to realize when you make a new character on beta, you actually start off at like 640 item level. Like 640 item level is really, really low. And I realized like when I start Legion properly on live, I'll be like 745 item level. So with that considered, it's not going to be as bad as my experience was when I first started on Legion here. Alright, yo, so first impressions. Big questions here. Is it fun? Honestly, my immediate reaction is it feels like a lesser version of what we have on WoD. It doesn't feel, there's not as many buttons to push, which immediately makes the game feel like there's less to do. Like I feel like I'm playing a simpler form of a Blood DK. And the whole like shifting of survivability into the hands of this other person, your healers, that's something that all tanks are going to have to deal with. It's not unique to the Blood DK. But I do feel like of all the tank classes, Blood DK will get hit the hardest in terms of how it feels. And probably my biggest complaint out of everything, take away everything, my biggest complaint is the removal of death packs. I feel like that immediacy, the speed that you needed to pop that in emergencies, having that emergency cooldown was what made Blood DK separate than any other tank that's out there. Maybe Brewmonk was close, but I loved having that to save myself when a healer couldn't. If a healer couldn't react fast enough to me hitting my purgatory or something, I would have death pack to get me back up there. So I'm really gonna miss death pack, and for me that is honestly one of the things that I'm really, really sad about. So my final answer to that question is no, I actually don't think right out of the box that it's very fun. I would take the Warlord's version of Blood DK over this one, but at the same time, I think it could have been a lot worse. I think they could have really screwed it up, and I'm kind of leaving, just a little bit of room because I'm not completely leveled out. I'm not in the tier bonuses. I'm not maxed out on my artifact weapon. So I will reserve a little bit to say, like maybe in a few months' time, we'll say, oh man, it's the awesomest thing. How could have I ever said that? But right out of the box, having tried it on beta for like 2 weeks now, it's not that fun. So first things first, I opened up my spellbook and I was like, oh my god, where is Death Pact? The other thing that I've been hearing about was them taking Death's Advance away from Blood DK. When I first heard that, I freaked out. I was like, oh my god, there's no way in hell I'm going to play a tank that doesn't have any kind of mobility when you have monks and like demon hunters dancing around everywhere. So I was really sad about that. But actually, having tried Wraithwalk, which is a 1 minute cooldown as opposed to the 30-second Death Advance, it's actually not bad. I actually have to say I've gotten used to using it, and at first I was like, I'm not sure about this, but it is nice. I don't feel as impaired as I imagined I would be, so that's actually a good thing. The next biggest change that I noticed was that Death Coil is no longer a thing, which is actually fantastic for me. I never liked like just the romance and fantasy behind Death Coil. Didn't make sense. You got this nice two-handed weapon, and the only spell that you ever used it for on live was Death Strike. So it makes a lot of sense to bring Heart Strike back. I actually missed Heart Strike when it was taken away the first time, so I'm glad that this is back in the game. Things to note, Heart Strike has changed. It's no longer, or that spender is no longer runic power, it's now converted to runes, and your Death Strike is converted to runic power. So you spend runes to generate runic power, and then you spend your runic power with Death Strike. Blood Boil is now free, which is actually makes a lot of sense because you were spamming Blood Boil all the time anyway. So really you're just limited by your recharge time. The next thing that you'll notice is that Bone Shield is now part of the rotation. It actually does damage now, which is kind of cool. Bone Shield no longer lasts whatever the 5 crazy minutes that it used to last, but instead is actually only 30 seconds long, so you're forced to have to use it as part of your rotation, which I'm okay with, using it rotationally. That actually kind of makes sense. Rather than have to pop it every 5 minutes and forget about it and just refresh it when it's up, you actually have to build charges of your Bone Shield, and then actually there's another ability here which kind of replaces Icebound Fortitude called Tombstone, that consumes your number of charges and gives you back an absorption percentage. And then lastly, I'm really happy that Sindragosa's breath is no longer a thing, but is now replaced with Bone Storm, which looks just awesome. In fact, I will say that most of the visuals in this thing are pretty awesome. They're really bloody now, which suits the class. The other thing that is kind of annoying, but I mean, you're just gonna have to live with it. I don't really know what the purpose of this is gonna be. Is Gorfine's Grasp is now a 3-minute cooldown, which is insane. Like, I can't imagine. I don't know. I guess there's gonna be specific moments in fights where like every 3 minutes ads will spawn, or you have multiple DKs, and then you just grip them in. But Gorfine's Grasp up to 3 minutes is a pretty huge CD, and I kind of don't really understand what the point of giving us the spell is at all. I don't feel like any of this new stuff is really that exciting. It seems like such a watered down spell. Let's see, even Blood Mirror, what's new here? Blood Mirror. Inflict an enemy with Blood Mirror for 10 seconds. While active, 20% of any damage dealt to you is redirected to the target. Like, yeah, maybe that's cool, and I have a feeling like if there's a boss ability that does like 6 billion damage to you and you reflect it back for 20%, there could be a gimmick fight where you might use that, fine. But 20%, it's not really that much. Like on an average mob, I don't really use it. Like, would I say that Blood Mirror is cooler than Dark Sim? Like, no, not at all. Like, that Dark Sim was amazing. You could copy a spell 100%, you know, and reflect it back at your target. That's cool. That was awesome. I use that a lot. But 20% reflection, I mean, I could care less, dude. Like, why don't you just give it to me 100%? Let me reflect 100% damage back. Then it's OP. Then it's fun. I mean, give me 80%. I'll be happy with that. This new leech thing, this new leech talent, I guess maybe I'll find uses for that, but on the surface, not really anything special. But in terms of like some of the new stuff, like, I don't really see anything here that is really that cool, and it doesn't really make me excited in the way that a Demon Hunter might make me excited, because Demon Hunter abilities are all new, and I feel like I can pop all this stuff. Like, that's exciting, right? But Blood DK, this new iteration, not really that exciting. Alright, question number 3. Do I see what it can do better than any other tank? I mean, other than the usual, not really. I don't really see where it's going to fit in. The fact that Gorfine's Grasp is such a reduced cooldown, there's not really, even if you had a DK, it's not going to make or break a fight. At least I find it hard to believe having one DK could make or break a fight like that. You need at least 2 or 3 of them for it to matter. So that is out of the question. Gripping, maybe, but then you could just get a DPS DK. You don't have to have a Blood DK. The anti-magic stuff is still there, so Vampiric Blood is still there. The short CD on Rune Tap is still there. But overall, I don't really see what Blood DK can bring to the table that other tanks can. For example, Paladin tanks have a raid-wide CD for 20% reduction. That's a bubble right there. You know, I just don't... the ability to teleport, to kite, all these things, I don't really see where the Blood DK fits in that sense. I mean, I'm sure we're going to be like the slow-moving anti-magic soaker, but so far I don't really see what Blood DK brings to the table that's better than any other tank option that's out there right now. And then the final question that everybody's asking for every class that they're playing, are you going to main it? And the honest answer is, I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to level it first probably because it's my main character and it has been for years. But I have no problem switching classes right now. I'm not attached to this Blood DK. It's not that special. If I'm gonna commit to, you know, doing everything for this, then I might consider another class for sure. So no, I'm not necessarily gonna main Blood DK. I will definitely level it, in addition to at least one other tank. In terms of purely, you know, just enjoying the character. Unfortunately, I gotta say, there's just not, I don't know, just. It was okay. It was kind of mediocre, kind of lukewarm. It was so-so. And like, I wish that wasn't the case. Like, I wish it sucks when you change the game to the point where it's less fun. That seems like a step backwards, doesn't it? You know. But at the same time, I'm not gonna rush into the, oh my god, the game's ruined. I'm never gonna give up on that. that's not to say that I didn't find things that I thought were really cool about the new changes. I think the visuals are just looking awesome. The whole blood theme makes a lot of sense for the class. The talent tree actually has some choice in it, which is kind of cool. So unlike before where we had mandatory talents, there actually is some room for playing around here. And even in making this video, I feel like I've changed kind of my stance on how I feel about it, and I'm, I guess, a little bit more optimistic. Kind of feeling like it's growing on me like a Drake album. Anyways, yo, that's it for me. Sky will be making a video on Brewmaster Monks coming up soon, and I'll probably make another Blood DK video when I've got even more playtime on it. So thanks for watching.